I tracked down my biological mother, but she slammed the door in my face and told me my birth was the worst thing that ever happened to her. I'm 26, adopted at birth, and I have amazing parents who never hid the truth from me. They always told me that my birth mother was young and couldn't care for me, but that she loved me enough to give me a better life. I grew up with this romanticized image of her in my head, thinking she was this tragic, noble figure who probably fought about me every year on my birthday. I spent years fantasizing about our reunion, imagining tears and hugs and looking into eyes that finally looked like mine. So, after months of digging through records, hiring a private investigator, and draining my savings, I finally found her. Her name is Elena. She lives in a quiet, middle-class suburb, the kind with manicured lawns and porch swings. I didn't call ahead because I was terrified she'd hang up, and I convinced myself that seeing me in person would make it impossible for her to reject me. God, I was so stupid. I pulled up to her house around noon, heart hammering against my ribs like it was trying to break out of my chest. I sat in the car for 20 minutes just breathing, checking my makeup, and trying to stop sweating. When I finally walked up the driveway, I felt like I was walking underwater. I knocked. A few seconds later, the door opened. It was her. There was no mistaking it. She has my nose, my chin, even the weird way my hairline peaks. She looked tired, wearing a frantic expression like she was in the middle of something, and she asked me what I wanted, assuming I was a solicitor. I couldn't speak for a second, just staring at her. But then I managed to choke out my name and told her that I was her daughter, born in November of 1998. I watched the color drain out of her face so fast I thought she was going to faint. She didn't cry. She didn't smile. She looked absolutely horrified, like she was looking at a ghost or a monster. I started to say that I just wanted to meet her, that I didn't want money, but she cut me off. She stepped out onto the porch, looking around wildly as if checking to see if the neighbors were watching, and hissed at me to lower my voice. Then she looked me dead in the eye with this cold, hard stare that I will never forget and told me that I needed to leave immediately. She said that she had no daughter. When I tried to plead with her, just asking for 5 minutes, she snapped. She screamed that coming here was the most selfish thing I could have done and told me that my birth was the worst thing that ever happened to her. She said I was a mistake that she buried decades ago and that digging me up was ruining her life all over again. Then she slammed the door. Hard. I stood there for a minute, staring at the wood grain, hearing the deadbolt slide home. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I stumbled back to my car, drove until my vision was too blurry from tears to see the road, and pulled into this motel. I feel rejected, foolish, and completely heartbroken. I am a mess right now. Part of me wants to go back and demand an explanation because how can a mother say that to her child? But the other part of me feels like I should just disappear and never bother her again. Did I do something wrong by showing up? Is there any coming back from this? Or should I just accept that she hates me? Commenter 1. Oh, honey, my heart breaks for you. Please listen to me. This is not about you. You are not a mistake. Her reaction was incredibly cruel, but it sounds like it comes from a place of deep, unresolved trauma. You didn't do anything wrong by wanting to know where you came from, but showing up unannounced can be very triggering for birth parents who have kept that part of their life a secret. Her words were about her own pain, not your value as a human being. Commenter 2. I'm going to be the devil's advocate here and say you need to leave her alone. As an adoptee myself, I get the urge to know, but slammed doors are a clear boundary. The worst thing that ever happened to her implies something traumatic regarding your conception or the pregnancy itself. If she has built a life where you don't exist, forcing your way in will only cause more pain for both of you. Go home, hug your real parents, and get into therapy. Do not go back to that house. Commenter 3. That was brutal, and I am so sorry you had to hear that. However, her reaction is so extreme that it makes me suspicious. Normal regret doesn't look like terror. She looked around to see if neighbors were watching. She said you were ruining her life all over again. It sounds like she's hiding a massive secret. I wouldn't go back to her door, but I wouldn't stop digging either. You deserve to know the medical history at the very least. Maybe write her a letter so she can read it without the shock of you standing there? Update 1. 3 days later. I didn't sleep at all that night in the motel. I just lay there staring at the ceiling, replaying the sound of the door slamming over and over in my head until I felt sick. I eventually drove home the next morning, feeling like a completely different person than the one who had left. I felt heavy. I felt dirty, somehow, like my existence really was a stain on the world just like she said. When I got to my apartment, I collapsed. I ignored calls from my friends and even sent a text to my boss saying I had the flu just so I wouldn't have to face anyone. I read through all your comments, and I want to thank you. Commenter 1. Hearing that it wasn't my fault helped more than you know, even if I don't fully believe it yet. And to commenter 2, I know you're right about boundaries, but the curiosity is eating me alive. It's like an itch I can't scratch. But commenter 3, you pointed out something that has been haunting me. The fear in her eyes. It wasn't just anger. It was pure, unadulterated panic. Yesterday, my adoptive mom, Melina, came over because I hadn't answered her calls in 2 days. She had the key, so she let herself in and found me surrounded by takeout boxes, eyes swollen shut. I tried to lie at first, telling her I was just depressed about work, but she knows me too well. She sat on the edge of the bed and stroked my hair until I finally broke down and told her everything. I told her about the drive, the house, the look on Alina's face, and the cruel things she said. I expected my mom to be angry at Alina. I expected her to defend me, to say that Alina was a monster. But she didn't. Instead, my mom got really quiet. She looked down at her hands, and I saw her face turn pale. I asked her what was wrong, and she tried to brush it off, saying she was just heartbroken for me. But I kept pushing. I told her that she was acting weird and that I needed honesty right now because I felt like my whole life was built on a foundation of sand. She started crying, which terrified me because my mom is the rock of our family. She never cries. She finally admitted that she and my dad knew more than they had told me. She told me that the adoption wasn't entirely a standard agency placement. She said that back then, the agency had given them a file that contained a letter from my birth mother, intended for the adoptive parents, not the child. My mom said they burned it. I felt like the room was spinning. I screamed at her, asking why the hell they would burn the only thing my biological mother ever gave me. She was sobbing by this point, grabbing my hands, begging me to understand that they were trying to protect me. She told me the letter was incoherent and disturbing. She said Elena had written that I was born of ash and that if I ever came looking for her, it would destroy everything she had built. My parents thought she was mentally unstable and decided that raising me with a positive image of her was better than burdening a child with the ramblings of a troubled woman. I felt betrayed. I pulled my hands away and told her to get out. I haven't spoken to her since yesterday. I feel completely alone. My birth mother thinks I'm a curse, and my adoptive parents lied to me my whole life to protect me. So now I'm sitting here with this new piece of information, born of ash. What does that even mean? It sounds like something out of a horror movie. I feel like I'm standing on the edge of a cliff, and looking down is the only way to find the truth, but I'm terrified of what I'll see. My adoptive parents burned the letter, so that lead is gone. But now I know there was a letter and that Elena has been terrified of me since before I was even adopted. Does Born of Ash sound like a cult thing? Or a mental health episode? I feel like I have to find out the truth now more than ever. I'm thinking about contacting the lawyer who handled the adoption 26 years ago. Is that crossing a line? Or should I just try to forgive my parents and drop this before I find out something I can't unknow? Commenter 1. Born of Ash? That sends shivers down my spine. That is incredibly poetic and incredibly disturbing. It definitely sounds like she was suffering from severe mental illness or perhaps severe postpartum psychosis. If your adoptive parents burned the letter, they really might have been trying to save you from reading something hateful. I know you feel betrayed, but try to see it from their perspective. They wanted you to feel wanted. Contacting the lawyer is a legal route, so it's less invasive than knocking on Elena's door again. I'd say go for it, but prepare yourself for a tragic story. Commenter 2. You need to cut your adoptive parents some slack. They raised you, loved you, and tried to shield you from a woman who clearly didn't want you. Burning the letter was wrong, yes, but their intentions were pure. As for Elena, Born of Ash sounds like a fire. Maybe there was a house fire? Or maybe she sees your conception as the destruction of her previous lives. Honestly, OP, this is getting darker by the minute. If you keep digging, you are going to find skeletons. Are you sure you're strong enough to handle them? Update 2. 2 weeks later. I wish I could say things have settled down, but my life feels like it's spiraling into a nightmare I can't wake up from. I haven't really spoken to my parents since the Born of Ash revelation. I moved into a short-term rental because I couldn't stand the suffocating silence in my apartment, and I definitely couldn't handle my mom's tearful voicemails begging me to just let the past stay dead. Every time she says that, it makes me want to scream. How can I let it die when I'm the living proof of it? I took commenter Free's advice. I stopped trying to contact Elena directly. I figured if she was terrified of me, harassment would only make her bolt. Instead, I became obsessed with the year 1998. I spent days in the downtown library, scrolling through microfiche until my eyes burned, looking for anything related to Elena's maiden name or the town she lived in. It took me 4 days, but I found it. And God, I wish I hadn't, but at least now I know why she looked at me like I was a monster. I found a scan of a local newspaper dated March 1998. The headline read, Inferno claims historic farmhouse, 1 dead, 1 critical. The article detailed a massive fire at a remote property just outside the town limits. The property belonged to a man named Julian Blackwood. He was 42. The only survivor was a 19-year-old girl found wandering the road nearby, covered in soot and suffering from smoke inhalation. Her name was Elena. The article was vague, but the follow-up pieces were not. There were rumors of a commune or a sect. Julian Blackwood wasn't just a farmer. He was a charismatic isolationist who had gathered a small group of vulnerable young people around him. People in the town whispered about what went on in that house. Manipulation, isolation, maybe worse. The fire was rolled as arson, suspected to have been started from the inside, but because the house was so far out and the destruction was total, they never pinned it on anyone. Julian's body was found in the basement. I did the math. The fire was in March. I was born in November. That means Elena was about a month pregnant when that house burned down. I stared at the grainy photo of Julian Blackwood in the paper. He had dark, intense eyes and a sharp jawline. I pulled up a selfie on my phone and held it next to the screen. The resemblance isn't just there, it's terrifying. I have his eyes. I have his jaw. When Elena opened the door and saw me, she didn't just see a daughter she gave up. She saw the man who, presumably, tormented her, staring back at her from the face of her own child. I felt sick. I physically threw up in the library bathroom. Born of Ash wasn't a metaphor. It was literal. I was the thing that survived the fire that was supposed to end everything. But here is where it gets worse. I couldn't just sit on this. I needed to know if Julian was a monster or just a victim of gossip. I drove back to the town where Elena lives, not to her house, but to the town center. I went to a local diner that looked like it had been there for 50 years, ordered a coffee, and tried to work up the nerve to ask the waitress about the Blackwood fire. I didn't have to ask. An older man, probably in his 60s, was sitting 2 booths down. He kept glancing at me, not in a creepy way, but in a confused, rattled way. Finally, he stood up and walked over to my table. His hands were calloused and shaking slightly. He asked me if I was related to the Blackwoods. My heart stopped. I tried to play it cool, lied, and said I was just a tourist, but he shook his head. He told me I looked exactly like him. He said, "You have Julian's glare." I haven't seen that look since the fire. I asked him what he knew about Julian. The man's face hardened. He told me that Julian was a devil in plain clothes. He said Julian took good kids and turned them against their families, locking them away in that farmhouse. He told me that everyone in town knew Elena had been his favorite, and that when the fire happened, most people were relieved Julian was gone, even if it was a tragedy. Then he leaned in close, his voice dropping to a whisper. He told me that the police never found the accelerant used to start the fire, but the rumor in town was that the doors were barred from the outside of the basement. He looked at me with pity and said, "If you're his kin, I'm sorry. Bad blood doesn't always wash out." I left the diner shaking. I drove back to my rental in a daze. I feel like I'm carrying a disease. My biological father was a cult leader who held my mother captive, and she likely set the fire that killed him to escape, while pregnant with me. No wonder she slammed the door. I am the living remnant of her nightmare. I feel completely paralyzed. I understand now why Elena hates me. I look like her abuser, but this opens up so many more questions. If she killed him to escape, which is what the barred from the outside rumor implies, then me showing up is a threat to her freedom, not just her peace of mind. Do I stop here? Knowing what I know, I feel like I should protect her by staying away. But part of me, the part that is apparently bad blood, wants to know the truth about my father. Was he really a monster? Or is this small-town gossip? And does my adoptive mom know this? She must, right? Is that why they burned the letter? Commenter 1. Holy S*******. This is way above Reddit's pay grade. Bad blood is nonsense. You are your own person, but the trauma here is massive. If Elena thinks you might expose her for arson or murder, even if it was self-defense, she is terrified of you for legal reasons, not just emotional ones. You represent prison time. You represent the man she killed. Do not go back to that town. You are poking a bear that has been sleeping for 25 years. Commenter 2. I disagree with the bad blood guy. You aren't your father, but you need to confront your adoptive parents. They burned the letter because it probably confessed to the fire. Born of Ash sounds like a confession, OP. If they knew she killed him and they hid it to get you, that's complicated. You need to talk to your mom again. Stop lying to her. Tell her you know about Julian. Watch her reaction. That will tell you everything. Commenter 3. This is terrifying. You need to be careful. If there were other people in that sector commune, are they still around? The man in the diner recognized you instantly. That means you are visible. If Julian had followers who loved him, you might be in danger from them too. Or if Elena has family who helped her cover it up, honestly, I'd hire a real lawyer now. Not for adoption papers, but for protection. Update 3. 1 week later. I didn't listen to the warnings to stay away. I couldn't. The image of the fire and the man's words in the diner were looping in my head. I went back to my parents' house. I didn't call first. I just showed up, walked into the kitchen, and slapped the printed copy of the newspaper article on the counter in front of my mother. Melina looked at the headline, and she didn't look surprised. She looked defeated. I asked her if she knew. I asked her if she knew my father was Julian Blackwood, the man who died in that fire. She sat down slowly and nodded. She told me that the agency had disclosed the circumstances of my conception to ensure my adoptive parents were prepared for potential trauma markers or health issues. I asked her about the letter. I asked her if Elena confessed to killing him. My mom started crying again. She told me that the letter wasn't a confession of murder, but it was a testament of cleansing. She said Elena wrote that she had purified the evil and that I was the spark that remained. My parents were terrified that Elena was mentally unstable and potentially violent. They adopted me to get me as far away from that town and that legacy as possible. They burned the letter because they didn't want me to ever think my mother was a murderer. They wanted me to think she was just young and overwhelmed. We sat in silence for a long time. I felt a weird mix of anger and gratitude. They lied, yes, but they were trying to shield me from a horror story. But then my phone rang. It was an unknown number. Usually, I ignore them, but my adrenaline was so high I just answered. A woman's voice was on the other end. It was shaky, low, and sounded like she was hiding in a closet. "Is this the girl?" the voice asked. I froze. I asked who it was. "I saw you at the diner," the woman whispered. "I saw you talking to Old Man Miller. You look just like Julian." I asked her who she was. She hesitated, then said, "I was there too. In the house. Before the fire. Elena wasn't the only one who got out. But she's the only one who talks like a victim." My blood ran cold. I asked her what she meant. "Julian wasn't a monster to everyone," she said, her voice getting harder. "Elena loved him. Until she got jealous. She didn't burn the house to escape, sweetheart. She burned it because he was going to leave her. And she didn't know you were in her belly yet. The woman hung up before I could say anything else. I stared at my phone, the dial tone buzzing in my ear. I looked at my mom, who was watching me with wide, terrified eyes, asking me who was on the phone. I couldn't tell her. I grabbed my keys and ran out of the house again. So now I have two narratives. Narrative A. Elena was a victim who killed her abuser to save herself and her unborn child. Narrative B. Elena was a jealous cult member who murdered my father in a fit of rage. And the worst part? The woman from the phone sent me a text message 5 minutes ago. It's an address, a darker, grittier part of the city about an hour from here. And a message. If you want to know what really happened to your father, come alone. I have his journals. I know how this sounds. It sounds like the start of a horror movie where the protagonist walks into a trap. But if this woman has Julian's journals, I could finally know who he was. Was he a cult leader? Or just a man? And is Elena a victim or a murderer? I'm sitting in my car, staring at the Jeep. My adoptive parents will try to stop me. The police will tell me to stay away. But I feel like I've been living a lie for 26 years. I need to know the truth. Do I go to this address? Or do I take this to the police and risk blowing up Elena's life if she really is a murderer? Commenter 1. Do not go. OP, are you insane? Come alone is the biggest red flag in human history. This woman claims she was in a cult. She thinks Elena murdered Julian out of jealousy. She might be a Julian loyalist. If you look like him, she might want to hurt you, or use you, or who knows what. This is dangerous. Screenshot the text, give it to the police, and stay home. Commenter 2. The plot thickens, but your survival instinct is spinning. This woman has a grudge against your birth mother. She wants to use you to get to Elena. If you go, bring someone. Bring a big, scary friend. Do not go alone. But honestly, I'd go. The jealous lover theory makes the born of ash and worst thing that happened to me comments make even more sense. Elena hates you because you remind her of the man she murdered, not just the man who abused her. Commenter 3. You are being triangulated. You have Elena, who hates you, the parents, who hid the truth, and now the mystery caller, who wants to expose Elena. The caller wants to weaponize you against Elena. If you go to that address, record everything. Live stream it if you have to. But be prepared to find out that your father was a charismatic manipulator who pitted these women against each other. You are walking into a 25-year-old war zone. Update 4. 3 weeks later. I'm writing this from my childhood bedroom. My real bedroom. The one with the glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling that my dad stuck there when I was 5. I've moved back in for a while until I feel steady enough to stand on my own 2 feet again. I know a lot of you told me not to go to that address. I know you said it was a trap. You were half right. It wasn't a physical trap, but it was an emotional sinkhole that I almost didn't crawl out of. I decided to go. I had to. But I didn't go alone. I told my adoptive dad everything, about the phone call, the fire, the accusations. I thought he would forbid me from going, but he just looked at me with this sad, heavy resignation and said, "Then I'm driving." We pulled up to the address the woman sent. It was a dilapidated apartment complex that smelled like mildew and stale cigarettes. My dad waited in the hallway with a can of pepper spray in his pocket while I went inside. The woman, who I'll call Cassie, was nothing like Elena. Where Elena was terrified and trying to hide, Cassie was manic. Her apartment was a shrine. There were no photos of family, just sketches and blurry pictures of Julian Blackwood taped to the walls. She looked at me with a hunger that made my skin crawl. She touched my face and whispered, "He's still here." She handed me a stack of leather-bound notebooks, Julian's journals. She told me that they proved Elena was a murderer, that Elena had been unworthy of Julian's love and had burned him alive out of spite because he was planning to take a new spiritual wife, Cassie. Cassie wanted me to take these journals to the police. She wanted me to be the face of the investigation, the long-lost daughter returning to avenge her father. I took the journals. I didn't promise her anything. I just wanted to get out of that room because the air felt thick with madness. My dad drove us to a park by the river, and we sat on a picnic table and read them. And that's when I finally understood. Julian Blackwood was not a misunderstood lover. He was a monster. The journals were the ramblings of a narcissist with a god complex. He detailed how he broke the girls who came to the farm. He wrote about sleep deprivation, starvation, and manipulation. But the entries about Elena were the worst. He was obsessed with her. He wrote about her pregnancy not as a joy, but as a binding. He believed that the baby, Ami, was a vessel for his own essence to be reborn. He wrote that on the night of the fire, he was planning a ceremony to ensure Elena could never leave him, involving locking her in the basement until the birth. He was going to imprison her. He was going to take me. The fire wasn't an act of jealousy. It was a desperate, violent act of survival. Elena didn't burn the house down because she was spurned. She burned it down because it was the only weapon she had left against a man who was planning to consume her existence. Cassie was so brainwashed she interpreted Julian's cruelty as divinity. She couldn't see the truth even when it was written in his own handwriting. I sat there by the river, shivering, looking at my dad. He was crying. He hugged me harder than he ever has in his life and apologized for burning Elena's letter all those years ago. He said, "We just wanted you to be ours. We didn't want you to be his." I realized then that I had been angry at the wrong people. My adoptive parents saved me. And in a twisted, horrific way, so did Elena. If she hadn't struck that match, I would have been raised in a cult by a sociopath, or I might not have survived at all. Her rejection of me wasn't about hate, it was about trauma. When she looks at me, she sees the ghost of the man who tried to destroy her. She sees the ash. I made a decision right then and there. I bought a portable grill from a hardware store on the way home. I took Julian's journals to the backyard of my parents' house, and I burned them. I watched the pages curl and blacken. I watched Julian's handwriting disappear into smoke. I destroyed the only evidence that could ever be used to hurt Elena. If Cassie wants to go to the police, she has nothing now. No proofs, just the ramblings of a woman stuck in 1998. I didn't go back to Elena's house. I won't ever knock on her door again. I know now that I cannot be in her life. My face is a trigger for her worst memories. Loving her means leaving her alone. But I did write her one final letter. I mailed it yesterday. I didn't put a return address on it. It said, I know the truth about the fire. I read his journals. You did what you had to do to survive, and because of that, I got to live a good life. I have parents who love me. I am happy. I am not him. I am not the ash. I am the bird that flew away. I burned his books. You are safe. I will never bother you again. Thank you for saving us. I don't know if she'll read it. I don't know if it will bring her peace. But it brought me peace. I'm exhausted. I feel like I've aged 10 years in 3 weeks. But I also feel light. I know where I come from now. I come from a survivor. And I was raised by protectors. I think I'm going to be okay. I burned the evidence. Cassie is blowing up my phone, calling me a traitor, but I blocked her. Did I do the right thing by destroying the journals? Part of me worries I destroyed history. But the other part of me feels like I finally finished what the fire started in 1998. I'm done with the past. I'm ready to just be me. Commenter 1. You absolutely did the right thing. You didn't destroy history. You destroyed a manifesto of abuse. You protected your mother, both of your mothers, really. The one who birthed you and the one who raised you. That letter you wrote made me tear up. I am the bird that flew away. That is beautiful. You broke the cycle, OP. Be proud. Commenter 2. Burning the journals was the most powerful thing you could have done. Cassie is lost to the cult. Don't let her drag you down. You gave Elena the greatest gift possible, safety and silence. You proved you aren't your father. He sought to control and keep. You chose to release and protect. That's the ultimate defiance of his legacy. Go hug your dad again.